Welcome everybody to the Lloyd Sansom lecture series for 2021. My name is Sue Kirsa. I am the chair of the board of the Australian Pharmacy Council, and we are really pleased to have you all with us today. We would love to have had you all present in our lecture theatre, but we need to make do for one last time with the technology we're using today. I would like to start this session by gratefully acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we're all meeting from today. We pay our respects to the resilience, strength and wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and emerging across the nation. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's vast knowledge in native plants and their uses. They were our first pharmacists. The country has provided medicines and healing throughout history. We acknowledge this important connection to country and the impacts colonisation continues to have on this integral practice. So as I said, it is very much my pleasure to be involved in this lecture this year, and I would firstly like to start also by thanking Lloyd for lending us his name for this lecture series. It's the highlight of our year at the APC, and we are very grateful to Lloyd for all of the work that he's done for the APC over many years and for lending us his name for this series. This year, we are coming together as it is the culmination of a series of webinars that we've been doing throughout the year. And this year we celebrate the work of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues and to launch our Reconciliation Action Plan. So without further ado, I will pass over to Brett Simmonds, who is the chair of the Pharmacy Board of Australia, for a few words of introduction as well. Over to you, Brett.
Thank you very much, Sue, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this webinar today. So I too would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera peoples, the traditional custodians of the land where I'm coming from for today's meeting. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context from the Pharmacy Board's point of view of supporting this cultural safety work and how it aligns with the national scheme strategy. So basically in 2018, there was a statement of intent was released, and that was between the 15 National Health Practitioner Boards, AHPRA, accreditation authorities, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health sector leaders and organisations. And then we followed this up in February 2020, with AHPRA releasing the National Scheme's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health and Cultural Safety Strategy 2020 to 2025. And this was really a very important piece of document and work forward. And the vision of that strategy was around patient safety for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples being the norm. And we recognise that patient safety includes the linked elements between clinical and cultural safety. And this link must be defined by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples themselves. So that was the vision. The goal of the strategy is to identify, implement and monitor the national scheme strategy and role in ensuring patient safety for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the Australian health system. So the Pharmacy Board has committed to funding APC to deliver a project entitled Embedding Cultural Safety in Pharmacy Education and Assessments for delivery from 2021 to 2023. Now, this project aims to contribute to the national scheme's vision by embedding cultural safety into the accredited pharmacy degree and intern training programs. As the accreditation authority for pharmacist education and training, APC has designed this project to identify and implement approaches that will support Australian pharmacy degree and intern training programs to integrate and embed cultural safety and education of pharmacists and really produce a culturally safe workforce. And this aligns both with APC's strategic direction as the accrediting body for pharmacy education in Australia, and also the national scheme strategy and role in ensuring patient safety for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples in the Australian health system. So this work is essential to improving health outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in this health system. And as we know, pharmacists are the most accessible health professionals. We play a critical role in delivering primary health services for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And there is a need to ensure that future pharmacists have the ability to develop positive relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in order to provide culturally safe pharmacist care. And that's what we're all about. And I think it's going to be successful if all of us play our part in doing so. So thank you for that. I now would like to pass over to Faye McMillan, who's going to take you through a reflection through the APC journey so far. Over to you, Faye.
Thank you, Brett. So I come to you from the lands of my traditional lands of the Wiradjuri Nation, and I am joined by Gumbunga Mimis, so brother and sisters Alex, Alina and Chaz. And for this part of the conversation, Chaz and Alina will be joining me about the journey that APC has been on with regards to the Indigenous Health Strategy Group and the opportunity that we find ourselves in, which is the recognition that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as professionals, as well as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as part of a journey of care, should be able to feel included, safe and heard. So I'd like to thank APC board, the CEO, and I'd like to ask Chaz and Alina to join me on screen to have a bit of a conversation around where we are and where we've come from. I'm the old girl in the room, in the sense of I've been now working in pharmacy for over 30 years, but as a registered pharmacist, 2021 marks 20 years since Australia had its first recognised Aboriginal person as a registered pharmacist in this country. And so as that human being, this is actually really an emotional day for me to be able to be joined by both Chastina, Alina and Alex and the other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pharmacists that have come since I've been here. And as I said, this is really an emotional day for me because started off as one and felt very alone and isolated, and now to be joined by the amazing human beings that have been on a similar journey and now supporting the APC in the Indigenous Health Strategy Group. I just want to ask Chaz and Alina to jump in here.
Thanks, Faye. Lovely to be here as well with Sis Alina too.
It's a big day, I'll agree with you, Faye. And I always find these things more emotional than I originally thought. I always get on camera, I'm like, oh wow, this is actually a big deal. This is not where I thought. I'm very proud that this even happens. You know, this is big.
And I think this is where the opportunity to say that this is what true allyship looks like, true championing of the inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples into the profession, but also the recognition that as professionals we need to do better to support the health and well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across this country, and to go from 20 years ago where nobody wanted to talk about it to today being able to sit in a space where it's not only spoken about, but we are actively taking steps and measures to change the educational opportunities of future pharmacists that will go on to work with our communities, that will go on and support you know, the health and well-being of our mob as they want it to be, not what Western society tells us that they want us to have, is a really critical part. And, you know, the establishment of the Indigenous Health Strategy Group was a turning point of changing that sense of isolation to all of a sudden being on a group where we could share experiences of the educations that we had received as pharmacists, but also how we as Aboriginal women, we'll talk about men coming on the group at a later date, but, you know, we do have Johnny Briggs there with us as a gumba, a brother in that space, but certainly to have a male pharmacist who is Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander on the group will also provide a perspective that is critical to moving this forward. But I think, Alina and Chaz, how did you feel when, you know, approached by APC to take these moments?
I always felt quite included. So it was something that I had never really been approached about before in this way. So no one had ever really come to me before and said, oh, we're interested in your perspective as an Aboriginal pharmacist. Like, oh, I've never thought about that before. And I think that was new to me. So for my journey, I'm a little bit younger than you, Faye, but when I started in pharmacy, my identity was actively withheld from my workplace. So I was told not to identify as an Indigenous pharmacy cadet. And so to go from that within a decade to being told that someone wanted to hear what I had to say was a pretty big moment for me. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. I'm glad that you've come to a lovely, smiley sort of place now, Alina, from that first sort of step. And I guess one thing that I reflect on too was that, and one thing that excites me most, I think, is that at a national level, young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, or even those who are mature age students, I guess I shouldn't be exclusive in that sort of way, can see that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people can be pharmacists. So when I went through university, I felt so alone. And I still remember that conversation I had with my father saying, I don't think I belong here. Everyone else's daddy was a doctor or mummy was a pharmacist. And actually, when I came across Faye many years later, I was like, oh my God, like fangirl moment. There are these really intelligent people who are professors and they're a pharmacist. And I'm like, okay, she is like something that I could be. Or so that was an epic moment of change. And I think when I had that conversation with Bronwyn inviting me to become part of that, I was like, my heart was racing. I'm a big feeling person. And when Faye said she was maybe going to cry, I'm like, please don't cry, because I'm so going to cry. I think I've been at other conferences and cried because it evokes such a powerful, strong feeling. So I'm glad to be continuing those feelings in a much more positive light too.
Thanks for both sharing. And I think, you know, for those that are listening and hearing these experiences for the first time, it can be confronting to hear that, you know, one of your colleagues was actively told to not authentically bring their whole self to the profession, and the sense of isolation that can be created when we other, you know, the opportunity to move our profession into a space where we are more inclusive, we are honestly seeking the knowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people bring to the profession as professionals, as members of our community that understand when you other somebody in a negative way, that it can have long-reaching consequences. And I think the fact that almost every one of us has said that we are emotional today really should be saying that this is why we need to do it, because at the end of every person is how they are made to feel about being included. And I know that, you know, this for some won't seem like a huge step, but for us, it is very much standing on the edge of the unknown and putting our faith in others to actively take care of our emotions, in the sense of being on a journey with us, but allowing us to lead that journey through our lens. And, you know, we're here with the reconciliation action plan coming forward, but also with the sense that the Indigenous Health Strategy Group is actively taking steps to make the future generations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in pharmacy and the practice of pharmacy a more inclusive space. So I'm going to draw my part of the reflection on this and just say, Mandangul, thank you to everyone who, when was asked the question, said yes, or what can I do? And so to Brett, PSA, to Bronwyn at APC and the board again, I just say thank you for being open to the inclusion of the Indigenous Health Strategy Group and what that means for pharmacy moving forward. Over to you now, Alina.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be joined in a moment by Jean Edwards, and I'm very happy for everyone to meet Jean. So Jean approached me a while ago because she was the leader of the RAP group at APC. And hi, Jean. Thank you for joining us from your happy retirement. I would like to ask you about some of your reflections that you've had on this journey and anything that you've learnt from this process.
Thanks, Alina. It's lovely to see you and to be having this chat with you. Firstly, as a member of the APC Indigenous Health Strategy Group, you joined our RAP working group as an advisor. Can you firstly provide some reflections on your journey with us developing that RAP?
Yes, I can. So one of the things that I learned in this process is probably around safety. So in this group and in this working process, I always felt really safe being an Aboriginal person. And that's not something that I always feel. So it was quite refreshing, and I learned a lot about that, about how to be safe, how to have safe relationships. And I felt like I had this space to really grow, learn. I mean, I got to meet amazing people like Faye, Leanne, John, Chaz, and watching other people be comfortable and safe in this space was a really important learning experience for me. So it has started, I think when you do a RAP, you do a big RAP, right? So it's about how your organisation is going to consider reconciliation, or how you and your job can consider reconciliation in your workplace. But I think where it starts for every person is it starts you on a little journey inside yourself. That's, well, what does reconciliation mean for me, and how do I embody reconciliation in this process? And one thing that I found doing this was there's who I am as a pharmacist, and then there's who I am as an Aboriginal person, and they're not together in the world. And so for me, it was, well, we definitely need reconciliation because I'm not a reconciled. This is not the same for me. And maybe that to me links back to safety. It's not safe to be who you are all the time. And I always felt safe in the APC. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Alina, and thank you for saying how comfortable you felt with us. I'd now like to touch on our communications and how we sought continuous feedback as we progress the APC RAP. Our people, and in that, and I include our staff, the board, the executive and external contributors, as well as Reconciliation Australia and our Indigenous Health Strategy Group, were all consulted and included in the development. Alina, how do you think and how do you feel we approached being that inclusive? Was it enough?
I guess we'll never know. I don't know if you know, maybe. I guess I can only reflect on how I felt, and I always felt included. And the part that I'd really like to stress here is I was included to the level that I wanted to be included. So I never felt like I had to do anything. I never felt like it was my responsibility to do anything. And that was really important. So I got to be involved as much as I felt like it. And this process happened during one of the this happened during a pandemic. This is one of the most stressful 2 years of my career in a lot of ways. And I found that by being included in this work, it was really it's always good to have things that you enjoy that are meaningful to you to help you keep going. And that's really where I would put this. So, you know, if I wanted to participate in the development of the artwork, that was something that I was able to do. If I was really busy that week, I didn't have to. I knew that it would happen anyway, and I knew that the people working on it already knew how I felt about things and would consider that kind of viewpoint as they went through. So maybe it felt light, you know, I wasn't carrying any weight, and maybe free, liberating a little bit. Yeah, it was good.
Lovely. Thank you again, Alina. And I want to touch base on some lessons learned whilst developing the RAP. For example, I learned that the more we have listened and learned, the more we have realized how little we actually know. As a group, we've learned that it's okay not to know. But the important takeaway for me is to ask and seek avenues of truth direct from Australia's First Nations people. They are our greatest asset. I needed to remove the non-Indigenous filter that was diluting the Australia's story and their history. Our RAP provides us a strategic framework so that we can learn more from the right people. Alina, what key lessons would you like to share?
So probably some of the things for me is, like I've already spoken about it, is, you know, creating a safe place, having a strong relationship. So, you know, Jean, we've had some pretty big conversations about some pretty big topics.
Yep.
We can still talk to each other, you know, nothing bad happened. And if you have a safe place and a strong relationship, you can definitely go through these more challenging conversations and know that you're going to be okay, and that it can make your relationship stronger. And I think that's the other part of reconciliation, which people often not necessarily forget, but worry about later, is that reconciliation should make Australia better. You know, it's about making things better, not just whole or not just less bad, or, you know, better for everyone. And this reconciliation journey certainly has made me feel better. It's made me feel stronger. And it's certainly, I feel, enabled us to have a stronger relationship as well. So I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Lovely. Thank you, Alina. We'd now like to share a short video from the members of the RAP working group showing their insights along the journey.
We gratefully acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which the Australian Pharmacy Council is based. We also pay our respects to the resilience, strength and wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and emerging across the nation. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's vast knowledge in native plants and their uses. they were our first pharmacists. Country has provided medicines and healing throughout history. We acknowledge this important connection to country and the impacts colonisation continues to have on this integral practice.
I was given the opportunity and privilege of being part of the team to develop the APC Reflect RAP. There have been many learnings from this journey, but I believe the most important personal lesson for me has been listening and learning from our First Nations people. Their knowledge, stories, teachings, guidance, and spiritual culture cannot be underestimated. I strongly believe respectful listening with reflection is a powerful tool.
I'm really proud of what our team has achieved. Like our APC values, our Reflect RAP is something we develop as a team because we're in this together. It's our tangible commitment to embedding our reconciliation journey into our everyday. We will never know everything, but we're committed to always learning and doing our part to influence positive change.
To me, it just makes sense that we do all that we can to achieve reconciliation. We need to hear the truth. There's healing in the yarns, there are learnings in the stories. There's a lot we need to do, and we need to do it together. I believe we have a moral obligation to do all that we can to improve the health and well-being of First Nations people. It's as simple as that. I'm so proud to be a part of the APC's RAP journey because I feel like we can actually make a difference in health outcomes.
Reflect RAPs are about finding the starting line for some difficult conversations, such as what reconciliation means, why it's necessary, and figuring out ways we can work towards it. With so many of us within APC and with many other workplaces doing the same thing, I believe we are forging new, stable paths towards reconciliation from almost every angle. The best part about the RAP for me was the partnerships that we've formed along the way, particularly with leaders like Alina. They're all built on a foundation of trust, and I can't wait to see where this RAP will lead us in our future work.
Developing this RAP has been a humbling journey that has made us see just how little we know. Learning about the mistreatment that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people receive when seeking medical help was a pivotal moment for a lot of us at APC. And we're a part of an organisation that can make a really big difference within the pharmacy sector. So to join hundreds of other organisations all looking at their sphere of influence gives us some hope that the small parts we all play will holistically contribute to improving quality of life for everyone.
Finally, I'd just like to say that developing this RAP has been an eye-opening and honouring experience. Thank you, Alina, for being with us on this journey.
Thank you for having me on the journey. So I'm now going to hand over to Chaz to take us from here.
Thanks, Alina. Thanks, Jen. It's so lovely to hear and share that information about the APC's reconciliation journey so far. I'd like to also pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional owners on which I live and work and where I'm coming from you today, the Gunditjmara people of the Yugambeh language speaking group here south of Meanjin in Brisbane. I'd also like to pay respects to elders of our past, present, and those deadly emerging ones. And I'm so excited that we've got Faye, one of our first pharmacists, and one of our latest to join this pharmacy journey with Alex, both here today in our conversation. So now we're talking about the future. We know with anything, the intent and the promise to do better has real meaning with action, which aligns to the theme of the Reconciliation Week for 2021, Reconciliation Takes Action. So what are we doing? With many of our artworks in Aboriginal culture and as featured in the APC's RAP artwork that's entitled Always Learning, you will often see images of circles and dots all connecting together. And that's what we're doing in the next part of our journey. We're sharing, collaborating, networking, growing and connecting. So I'd now like to bring to the conversation Bronwyn, the CEO of the APC, and also Deborah from the Uni of South Australia and President of the Council of Pharmacy Schools. And they're going to share on the Council and APC's collaboration and how they're connecting those dots for the next part of our journey. Welcome.
Thank you, Chaz. It's fantastic to be here today. It's an emotional day for me. I am a Kiwi Pākehā woman living in your land, and I never thought I would be in an event like today where we're talking about the future of working in partnership with our First Nations people. APC is committed to embedding cultural safety into pharmacy education. And to do this, we've done a number of things that you've heard about. But what we're doing next is also very exciting. I have to really thank the Pharmacy Board of Australia, and Brett is here today, for giving us some support to do the next stages, and also to the Indigenous Health Australia Group, who have given us support too in the work that we're looking at doing. It's apparent from what we've done so far in putting standards together about how our next generation will be learning how to provide a culturally safe pharmacy and service to people, that we needed to also help our education providers and ourselves to actually understand what that means and how can we do that. And so for us, we're the accreditation authority. We set the standards, but we aren't delivering training, and we needed to work with willing partners. And I'm really excited today to introduce Deb Rowett to you, who has been our willing partner from the Council of Pharmacy Schools for Australia and New Zealand. And we approached the Council of Pharmacy Schools, CPS, to say, we'd really like to put together something that's going to really support your members. How about it? And their response has been great. So Deb, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Bronwyn. And I'd first of all like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which I'm meeting on here in South Australia, the Kaurna people, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. And quite coincidentally, Bronwyn, we didn't plan this, but even our images on the screen sort of are showing the sort of complementary way, I think, in which we've been working on this, and also to thank the Pharmacy Board, but the leadership that the Australian Pharmacy Council has shown, and the Indigenous Health Strategy Group. I think some of the comments that have been made already today highlight how much it has also been about respectful listening and learning, always learning. And I think from the Council of Pharmacy Schools of Australia and New Zealand, they're dedicated to promoting high quality pharmacy education. And through CPS, the aim is to advance and promote pharmacy education, research, the discipline of pharmacy and the pharmacy profession. And individually, the universities have been focusing on cultural safety and enhancing that in their programs of study. But collectively, working with you, Bronwyn, through the leadership that APC has shown, we have an opportunity to amplify that contribution and to enhance cultural safety through the programs of study. As I said, many of the programs of study are enhancing and including that in their programs. But I think it's through that respectful listening, and also really wanted to highlight that it is about acknowledging and valuing Indigenous ways of knowing and bringing about the total well-being of their communities, not only focusing on the disease aspects, which I know has been mentioned, but it's that holistic approach that this partnership will enable. So thank you very much, and looking forward to this future that we're discussing today, and bringing that learning to enhance the outcomes for all of us involved in this work, but particularly to think about the way in which we can, I think, through this opportunity, bring about, as I said before, the total well-being of the communities that we serve. Thank you.
Deb, when you're saying that, it just reminds me of so much that I've learned from Faye and Chaz and Alina. We're talking about improving lives for their people, for their mothers, fathers, children, grandchildren, and it's all about people. So I'm really looking forward to we will be making some announcements next year about our proposed working together, and it's just lovely to be here today to talk to all of you people about what we are doing in our journey. Thanks, Chaz. That's probably it from me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Deborah, did you have anything else that you'd like to add on the end there?
Not only again to acknowledge the work and to commend, for example, the literature review that was undertaken as an excellent resource. And like so much other research that we do, it always starts with that literature review and finding out what's known. So again, I'd just like to highlight some of the resources, Bronwyn, that you have developed, and also the conversations that have been taking place. I know they're recorded, but they are a wonderful resource as well as we move forward together.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think when it comes to Indigenous health, it's not just about partnerships. I think relationships is a more powerful word to use, I think. So now I'd like to invite Alex to join the conversation. So Alex is just in the process of completing his hours to become a registered pharmacist, and he's doing some deadly work to get some fancy letters after his name as well. So Alex, tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Burke. So I'm a Wiradjuri man, but I currently live on Darug lands in good old Blacktown. So as said, so I'm currently in the end process of doing my intern hours, and I passed both my registration exams. So looking forward to the big future that comes ahead. So
excellent. And what brought you to pharmacy?
It's a very long story. So back in, I think it was 2013, there was an Indigenous camp that was hosted by USyd Pharmacy, so the University of Sydney Pharmacy, and it was organised by Rebecca Moles and Niall Wheat. And I didn't think of pharmacy as a profession. It didn't cross my mind, and my mum made me go on that camp, as any good mother would do. And I think just pharmacy clicked for me. I think it was just a good melding of helping people and like my interest in science. So I think it was just a good melding of that, and it's just what I've wanted to do since. So
wonderful. And maybe that you've made it to the end of your intern year, I think is a sign that something went right along your journey through your studies. So what was your experience as an Aboriginal man studying pharmacy?
I think it was interesting just because it was good doing it, but at the same time, there's no one to really look up to, because it's just there's just such a low number of Aboriginal people who identify as pharmacists. I think like the last time I checked, it was 70 among 30,000 people, which is just such a ridiculously low number. So it was good because we do have a very good Aboriginal like centre at like the University of Sydney. Like we have the Gadigal rooms, and a lot of all the other Indigenous students come meet up there. But I was like the only one who did pharmacy, so like I had no one really to talk to. So which was interesting. So we had to find other means of conversation, but in that way, it was kind of weird because you had no one to connect to.
Yeah, and I guess we're all about connections with those dots, like I was speaking about. And that's sort of how I felt when I found Faye. And so hopefully through this next part of your journey, you'll find some other connections that APC has helped facilitate as well. And tell me a bit more about this honours project that you got going on. So the next step from that.
Yes. So I got into honours, which was very exciting. And my original project was changed quite a few times due to the pandemic. So it was originally meant to be going to hospitals to chat with Aboriginal patients, but then because they don't want a student in the hospitals around that time, so it got changed to because Beck told me about the changes that were happening in the curriculum. So it got changed to, oh, so what are we doing in regards to Aboriginal cultural competence in the curriculum in pharmacy at UCID? And I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. Let's dive into it. And so I went through the whole faculty and interviewed all or the majority of heads of units to see what content they had in their degree and what they want to change, what they need to be able to make changes. And yeah, so, and that was quite exciting. And that leads into, so the APC heard about my project and they realized, oh, what he's already done for one of the unis. What happens if you do it for all of the unis that do pharmacy across Australia? And they asked me to be a part of that. And I said, yeah. So, and yeah.
I think it's so great that, and one thing that I've really appreciated in my journey as well is all those invitations to participate and the genuine assistance that was afforded to me to participate in these sorts of conversations. So I'm very excited for you. So maybe we might bring Rebecca in then for her perspectives on how you felt that this has all gone. Beck?
Yeah, look, I couldn't be more proud of Alex. It's exactly right. I met him, he was in year 9 going into year 10, and I had a phone call with his mother saying, I know he's too young to come on this camp, but will you take him? I was like, oh, okay. And to be honest, we've never looked back. We've never not been in touch since, that January back in 2013. And Alex, the university has some support, so there's extra tutorials and things that Alex could undertake. Some of his tutors are also PhD students and some of his best friends now, and I just couldn't be more proud. And as the academic advisor for Indigenous kids at Sydney Uni, like prior to Alex, I only had one other person to support. Like, it's unfortunately, Alex is right, there's just not the mass of you guys yet. We need more.
I think it's just about that scaffolding, isn't it? The next step, the next step, the next.
Well, you guys are becoming the best role models. As Alex said, he hadn't even heard, pharmacy wasn't really on his radar, but then he got to experience a little bit of it in year 9 and went, wow, like, this is great.
Yeah, we don't really get around on like the sporting fields and stuff like that. So it is a little bit more of a challenge to get ourselves known and out there, which is what is great about these conversations that APC is having in so many different mediums like webinars and podcasts and things like that as well. How do you think this might build pharmacy's role in this space, Beck?
Yeah, look, I think one thing that will come out of this is all the unis working together. Like, I'm from one institution, Deb's from another, but this is we've all got to work together in this space, and this is what I think some of Alex's PhD work will be around, finding out what people are doing, sharing the amazing things that are coming out of different pharmacy schools, but also working together to build even more resources. So Alex is going to he's definitely going to be doing it. We're going to be co-designing cases with Aboriginal people because, in my reflections, I was just making assumptions about what an Aboriginal person might look like and say in the pharmacy and do. It was so naive, I think, that, we should have been working with Aboriginal people the whole time in developing these case studies. So I'm super looking forward to that part of his work.
Oh, thank you. And I think the tone, and I can feel the excitement in the room today. And I love that you are both so excited, and Alex seems so excited. And what I might do is just invite Faye and Alex to have some closing remarks as one of the elders and then one of the students who are coming along to bring this journey of pharmacy future to life.
Thanks, Chaz. And I think from the oldest Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person who is a pharmacist, to the newest. We thought that this would be a nice bookend to, I suppose, what my hopes and aspirations 20 years ago have meant to today, and then, you know, the baton that Alex will take as the hopes and aspirations. But I do also want to say that this isn't just about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples doing the work. We need every other person in the pharmacy profession to be alongside of us, to walk this journey with us, to listen deeply and hear what we say. And in handing that baton to Alex, you know, the privilege of being able to have these opportunities also comes with great responsibility. It comes with a lot of personal cost, and it comes with sometimes trauma. And so, as I said, Gumbung and Mimis that are with us today, the brothers and sisters that are on this journey and willing to walk, all I say is Mandanguru, and that one of my dreams has been made a reality today, in that there has been a very clear signalling of intentions that this isn't just going to be a partnership. We are going to form strong relationships that will nurture and support each other as we move forward, but always through an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of knowing, being and doing. And Alex, you get the last say.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things I wanted to say in regards to this. So especially in my time, especially is like, I think growing up in my generation, like I think there's also been the big culture shift in regards to Australia, because I still remember going through school, still not learning a lot about Indigenous issues, and seeing that big shift in the last couple of years has been quite empowering. But I still feel that in regards to this, that more awareness needs to be placed on Indigenous issues. And there's something, I can't remember where I heard it from, but I feel that it sticks out to me, is that complacency is the death of action. Like, we can't just feel that we've done enough. We always have to keep listening. We always have to keep finding if there are any issues. We have to always take action and try and fix them. I feel that whatever cracks there are, we have in society still, or in our educational institutions, that they don't get any bigger, and we take an active part in actually filling them and mending those gaps. I feel as well that going forward, pharmacists shouldn't really feel afraid to practice with First Nations people, and that they're able to make a culturally safe place to be able to practice. And also, and a big thing that I've harped on about is that I think definitely want to see more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people come into pharmacy and make a career out of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. I think so. We're going to invite you back into the room to have the closing. Just as I said, can I thank everybody who's come on board to listen today and to hear the voices of colleagues who are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander in this space, and that it's critical that you keep listening to our truths, and that we are given the opportunities and moments to be able to speak our truth. So hand back to Sue.
Thanks, Faye, and my heartfelt thanks to the panellists today for your contribution. And as always in these events, I learned a lot today, and I hope everyone who's joined us today on the event has also learned just something little or something big in this area. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for the panellists for your contribution, and I really look forward to progressing this work and being involved as we move forward. Thanks everybody once again. Thank you.